So you have this encounter with the Holy Spirit. You receive your prayer language. Uh, you've prayed for Wanda. She's had an encounter with the Holy Spirit, the presence of God. So, but you don't. Did you tell her? Did you tell her you received your
I
prayer language or no? You
I
didn't.
was afraid.
Okay,
I
so
was afraid. I didn't know whether I'd lose her or
so at
whatever.
what point was it? A few days
So
later, or
so almost a week had passed by. I remember it being at least 5 days, at least that long. And we're sitting there, and somehow the I mean, you have to understand, we were all alone in the mountain there.
yeah,
We were all alone. And sometimes we would have devotions with the boys for 2 hours in the morning, and they would say, "Oh, Daddy, keep reading, keep reading," and and wouldn't let me stop. And no, you guys are just trying to get out of your schoolwork. Tease them, but they really, I mean, God was working in our family.
right.
We'd be sitting at the dinner table, and all of a sudden, the presence of God would, we'd turn to each other, both feel it, and say, "I wonder who's praying." So lots of things we did. It's not to our credit. It's other people who prayed,
Right,
and
right,
even ones who didn't believe in what was happening to us were
right.
praying for us. And so there's a lot of stories to tell there
Yeah.
too. Jim had, or Barbara had dreams, and Jim had dream, and he said, Tom, you can't win these souls from the portals of glory, and they'd seen
In
me.
other words, you can't live in that country where there's so much.
Tom had been killed, and Wanda came back, and
Right.
and then just
Right.
I mean all kind of things, and so.
So 5 days goes
So,
by.
so we're sitting at the table, and we get around to talking about this experience, and Lee said, kind of tongue in cheek, I received in my room the other night, and when was that? And I think he said it was Thursday night, and that was the night that I had received.
Mm.
That I had gone that evening and prayed, during supper time, and then during the night received.
So
And
your
here it was,
15-year-old boy received the gift of the Holy Spirit, the evidence of speaking in tongues. He received this the same night.
the same night, and so Wanda felt not resentful but frustrated because she hadn't,
Right.
and yet had felt all this with the Lord, and but yeah, that it took that long.
That started the journey into then supernatural miracles and other
Yeah.
things began to happen that
Well,
kind of opened the
we
floodgates.
had a
to,
lot of things happen out there. I remember because the whole area, the people we had worked with had all been, that their background was Central American Missions, which is Dallas Theological Seminary in Central America, and so they're very Baptist. And so when I went, and I was afraid to tell them even, that
Right.
what had happened. But as I began to share, God began to move, and the people out there began to receive. And one little woman had been praying. She had been to a EA campaign before in Guatemala City and had received the baptism. And that woman is the one who had a dream or a vision, and she said, and when she received this bouquet of flowers, and she left her house, and she was throwing flowers down along the trail as she walked up the hill. And when she got to this particular place, she laid the flowers down. And we later went and built a church, and we started the corner of that construction where she had laid down the
bouquet
of flowers that the angel had given to her. And I remember some of these details, and some of them have, they'll come back to me as I'm talking. So I do have it written, and eventually that book has got to be out because that's
Right.
told in detail, you know,
Right,
exactly
right.
how that was, how these people had prayed, and we escaped the guerrillas and on and
There
on.
was a time where I remember a story. I think hearing my mom say that there was a time when you were feeding people and you ran out of food, but the food didn't run out or something.
That was in Honduras, and Dr. Dobson, his ministry, you know, what was it, family?
Right, focus on the
Focus
family.
on the family. They sent a representative because they had heard about it. That was in Honduras after the flood,
Right.
and people were without food, and we took. I mean, that's miracle upon miracle to tell about that. But we went with our bus loaded with food, and we went to the fairgrounds. And the pastor warned me. He said the president was there yesterday, and they threw old shoes at him because all he gave him was promises. And he said, so I don't know. Well, when we got there, we had enough food, and we had enough rice and milk to last for the children, and we had Dixie cups to feed them in, so we were right at 1,000 Dixie cups, and we gave that, and then we had this other rice and another big tub, and we had tortillas. No, we had given dry corn, 5-pound bags of corn in
That we raised on our.
the corn that we actually raised.
Mm-hmm.
I told the guys, I said, plant the corn. They said, Brother Tom, it hasn't rained yet. And I said, I bought the seed and I can replace the seed. You plant the corn. I mean, the guys that worked for me in our ministry, they didn't want to do it. So, okay, we'll do it, but you're going to lose your seed. We planted the corn that day. Our boys in our school, they went through and they planted like 2 acres of corn. That night it rained, and it kept raining, and it kept raining, and it kept raining. No one could get their crops in for a month.
Oh.
Just rain. And
But then a flood came later that devastated everything, and nobody had any food.
But that came the day after we harvested all this corn, 30 100-pound bags of corn.
So now you're distributing it to these people that have nothing.
They have nothing. And lots of even villages. There was 15,000 Hondurans that died in this thing. We would go where there were villages, and it was just like a big old tiger.
A mudslide.
Just a mudslide had taken the whole village. A guy gets up to check on his cow, and his house and all the rest of the villages, his family slides down under a mountain of dirt, and he's out there with his cow in the pasture field, you know, and just so many things, miracle after miracle.
So you're in distributing this food,
and we've taken this food, and Brenda is handing out this food, and I went to her and I said, Brenda, how much we got left in there? We're just a little bit down at the bottom of this.
14 in or so.
Just a little bit down at the bottom of this big pot, and we still had 100 people in that room, and people outside. And I said, can we make it, Brenda, with what? And so I stepped outside and I said, I'm sorry, we're running out of the food, and we can't take any. But anyway, we went like that for a while, and I came back. And the same amount was still there. We'd fed
Brenda said, Dad, it doesn't go down.
We had fed all that, yeah. And she said it doesn't go down. And I ended up going outside and hollering, "Is anyone else hungry? Wow. We have food." We had started with the elderly and with the pregnant women, and then we finally let the guys in.
So you still had about 200 people with only that much left in your pot, and you were like, there's no way, this is probably enough for maybe 15. But it never went down.
It was something that Brenda noticed that it wasn't going down. She's out there.
That's your teenage daughter.
It was done, and then it was kept.
So they heard about this in Tegucigalpa, and they sent somebody down, but I was out in the mountain somewhere else preaching, and I didn't get in the interview because I had to keep my obligation to that scheduling.
So what were some of the other things that you saw? Because you would later eventually you would build a Bible school. You would that ministry would really take off. You would begin a network of ministries for missionaries and things like that.
There was
So we'll get
there
to
were
that.
so many things.
We'll pause here.